Hello and welcome back to the attic with me, Lou. Today we're going to be talking about a few more of my go-to films that I probably shouldn't like as much as I do. I'll quickly address the awkward pause that came between this and my last video, which was actually in November of last year.
See, nobody cares.
Look, I just need to stop promising that I'm going to make more videos more often because it's just a lie.
A bald-faced lie.
And we're going to have to get used to that. That being said, please still be sure to like, subscribe, share, etc. if you feel so inclined. No pressure. It would be nice though. So a lot has happened since the last video, but I'll be darned if I can be asked to recap. So we're just going to jump straight in, you know, out with the old, in with the new, because it's officially the summer of 2022. One step closer to the inevitable machine uprising that I've been dreading for so long. So it only seems appropriate to talk about a few futuristic sci-fi movies. And what better ones to talk about than a couple of guilty pleasures, because as the saying goes, you only live once. And according to Sarah Connor, time's a wasting. So sit back, relax, and let me talk at you about some saucy science fiction.
Science fiction. Double feature.
Just a word of warning, I'm not going to hold back on any spoilers. So if you haven't seen the films and you desperately want to, and this all gets too much for you, then just pause this, come back to it, it's fine. But I can't guarantee that you're going to want to watch either of these films after you've heard me talking about them, so you might just want to hang in there. Alrighty, let's do it to it. I first saw Logan's Run when I was much younger, and I found it both disturbing and hilarious. Both of those adjectives still very much apply to this day. It's a sci-fi from the 70s that some would categorize as iconic, and yet I meet many people who aren't that familiar with it. So, Logan's Run takes place in the 23rd century in this utopian bubble where mankind lives only for pleasure.
We're having a party, right?
Alright for some. There is, however, the small catch that in order to prevent overpopulation, everyone's life must come to an end when they turn 30. From birth, humans receive an implant in their hand that changes colour as they get older until they reach the age of 30, when their hand gem starts blinking and they are forced to participate in a ritual called carousel. Here it will be determined if they die or get renewed, which one would assume is some form of rebirth, but it's a very vague phrase in and of itself.
One for one. What everyone's been taught to believe. One for one.
Well, why not? That's exactly how everything works. Keeps everything in balance. One is terminated, one is born. Simple, logical, perfect.
There are, of course, runners who attempt to evade the system in order to prolong their lives, so it's up to the police officers known as Sandmen to hunt them down and terminate them. One particular Sandman, Logan 5, played by Michael York,
I'm Basil Exposition with British Intelligence.
discovers that numerous runners have successfully escaped and reached a secret safe place known as Sanctuary.
Unaccounted runners 1056. You may state your question.
1,056 unaccounted for?
His computer boss orders him to find and destroy Sanctuary, stealing 4 years from his life clock, forcing him to become that which he has always hunted, a runner. Logan and his female companion Jessica desperately search for Sanctuary whilst attempting to evade numerous threats, including Logan's bestie and former colleague Francis, who is relentlessly pursuing them.
Where'd they go? The Sandman in a cream. Didn't you see them?
I think what I love about this film is the kind of dated charm that comes with the 70s interpretation of what the future might look like, and is executed in a way that you might expect, with beat loopy music and model sets, But it should be noted that this film came out in 1976, which is only 1 year before A New Hope, and I think it goes to show how great the Star Wars films look and how well they've aged, because I genuinely used to think that Logan's Run was filmed in the 60s, because, well, just look at it. The main location of the movie is Arcade, a city that looks like a cross between Disney's Epcot and a shopping mall, and I think the film probably is making a statement about consumerism because everyone just kind of mills around and goes to brunch. And like, sex is super casual because everyone has these handheld remotes where they can just like flick through potential hookups and then choose someone that looks appealing for an instant fling.
Let's have sex.
No.
Then why are you wasting my time?
And cosmetic surgery is like super standard and not a big deal at all because apparently physical appearance is a huge priority in the future. Okay, maybe there's something uncanny in how familiar all of this sounds, but when it comes to the costumes and decor, that's where it gets dated, and that's what I love. Everything in Arcade is so geometric and shiny and modern, and there's this real claustrophobic feel to it, mainly because there are no windows to the natural world. It's so self-contained that when the characters do eventually make it outside, it does feel both liberating and a little bit jarring.
I hate outside. I hate it!
And while the city is comprised of mainly neutral or metallic tones, the people make it quite vibrant because everyone wears the colour that represents their age group. So I think it's yellow for the youngsters, green for the teens and early 20s, and red for the over 25s. Or something along those lines. And these outfits are ludicrous because they are head to toe, one shade, and there's a whole lot of tights and deep V's. Everyone kind of looks like Peter Pan. Which maybe was intentional because think about it, they're never going to grow old. And there is this gang of youths in the cathedral quadrant known as Cubs who do seem a little bit lost boy-y.
Billy, come on.
Billy, we got one! Looks like we've got a rudder in his para.
But maybe I'm reading into it too much. And maybe someone just thought that deep V's and tights looked good.
And who am I to question that?
The most memorable costume, in my opinion, is Jenny Agutter's first outfit because it's essentially a piece of cloth hanging on by a prayer. Prayer? Hanging on by a prayer. And I haven't seen that much thigh since the last time I went to KFC.
I got more legs than a bucket of chicken.
But my favourite costumes are worn by the plastic surgeon or laser surgeon and his assistant played by the stunning Farrah Fawcett because they are glittery. And that's the future that I want to live in.
Fine, Holly will get you ready. You're in expert hands. Believe me.
And Michael Anderson Jr.'s performance is just as fabulous as his outfit because he goes from smarmy to sadistic at the drop of a hat.
The beam will cut through that uniform and just exactly through the skin beneath. Absolute precision. Watch now. Just imagine what would happen to you if the healing stopped functioning.
He's just fabulous.
I am.
And because the events in this movie are life or death, there's a lot of intensity behind the bulk of the performances. But the one that stands out for me the most is the runner that they bump into, played by Lara Lindsay, because she taps into something deep.
There's been a terrible error. My life clock must have broken in some way. I'm nowhere near 30. I'm 22. I should be green. Did you hear me? Green.
Now, don't
Let
be
me
afraid.
go.
I am not
Let me
going to
go.
hurt you.
It's a minor role that packs a tremendous punch. And let me tell you, that shit hits different when you're actually 30. 1. It's fine. Who's counting? It's fine.
No.
And I don't blame her for being absolutely terrified because if I lived in this world, I would be too because it's really scary. And as I mentioned, when I watched this film as a kid, it unsettled me. And rightly so. There's a lot of nightmare fuel in Logan's Run. First and foremost, let's talk about how deeply horrific the ritual of carousel is. So on their last day, all the blinking 30-year-olds stand in a circle in the middle of what looks like a coliseum, wearing these terribly disturbing masks, leotards, and capes before floating up into the air and exploding. All the while, the audience cheer and shout "Renew," hoping that these people will somehow be reborn. But you don't have to be Sherlock Holmes to know that none of these poor floaters are going to get renewed, a fact that is later confirmed in the film.
You mean nobody's ever been renewed?
They're just dying, and everyone's cheering, and it's so blinking morbid. Plus, the fact that the special effects aren't all that great makes it more unnerving somehow, as does the weird Carnival Tron music. Another thing that used to freak me out is Box, the robot that they meet in the ice cavern. Now, don't get me wrong, the way that he moves is hilarious because he's very clunky and unstable, and very nearly bumps into the actors a few times, which cracks me up. But his face is really creepy, and the way that he talks...
I'm more than machine or man, more than a fusion of the two.
It gives me the willies. Plus, while seemingly inviting and non-threatening at first with all of his beautiful ice sculptures of birds and whatnot, he turns out to be quite the menace who's harbouring a butt-ton of frozen naked people. And while we're on the subject of naked people, because if there's one thing this film loves, it's just that. There is this weird sex club that they briefly walk through, which isn't so much disturbing as it is wildly unnecessary, and the randomness of it just kind of adds to the nightmarish quality of the film as a whole, because that's what it feels like overall, is just one big nightmare where you're going from one location to the next whilst everyone's out to get you, be them clothed or naked. And it goes without saying that Michael York does a great job as the protagonist because he takes us on a journey with his character, in both the literal and metaphorical sense. He starts out as a merciless and cocky douchebag, and then everything gets flipped, and he realizes that there's more to life than just the simple pleasures, and becomes more of a hero. Or at least, less shitty.
No! Don't go in there! You don't have to die! Well, no one has to die at 30! You can live!
And like I said, this film just hits different when you turn 30, because you do realize that life is precious and we need to seize it and be less wrapped up in our commercial frivolities and appreciate the things that really matter. Plus, I just don't think I've done enough of my life that I can justify exploding in a coliseum. That's never going to sit right with me, so let's move on, shall we? Barbarella seems like the perfect film to pair with Logan's Run because they're both set in the future. They both follow a protagonist who's moving from one weird location to the next. They're both silly and outdated. They're both obsessed with sex and female nudity, and they both kind of freak me out a little bit with unnecessarily creepy things. But we'll get round to that. First, let's talk about the main reason that I've watched Barbarella more times than I can justify. It's because I, like many, am obsessed with Jane Fonda.
You want to tell me about that confrontation you had with Steele at the reception, Mr. Sears? What was that all about?
Who drops by? You call, you make a plan. You set it up weeks in advance, and then you cancel 3 times.
She's an absolute legend in so many fields. Her contributions to film, to feminism, to environmental affairs.
I hope they use me. What am I here for if not to be used by good people for good things?
And her fitness videos.
And here we are, ready to work out. All right.
I love this workout so much, mainly because I love the song that's in it.
There's so much more to you than meets the eye.
However, if you watch my videos, you will know that I lost the ability to watch VHSs in the Great Fival disaster of 2021. But I managed to purchase and download a digital copy of this, and now I have it on all my devices, so the only thing that's keeping me from having that summer body that I've always wanted is myself, because I can't be bothered to do the workout every day. It's quite an intense one. 1, 2, 3, 4. But Back to Barbarella. The film takes place in an unspecified point in the future where the Earth has been pacified, so weapons aren't really used anymore, war isn't really a thing anymore, and neither is sex, as we know it.
That? But nobody's done that for centuries.
Barbarella, a space traveler and representative of the United Earth government, is sent on a mission by Earth's president to find the scientist Duran Duran. Please tell me now. Yes, that's where they got their name from, and stop him from destroying the universe with his positronic ray. A few crash landings here and a couple of diversions there lead Barbarella on a wacky adventure through numerous planets, outfits, and lovers. The storyline is pretty weak, mainly because there isn't really much of one, but it's so iconic in its aesthetic, from the crazy sets to the bouffant sets, S-E-T, to the bouffant hair, to Barbarella's array of sexy yet stylish garments. And I'm not joking when I say that she changes her outfit every 5 minutes and each look is as fabulous as the last. I particularly enjoy the furry number that she wears leaving the ice planet, because as incredible as she looks in it, it very quickly becomes a comedy device because the thing is just so gosh darn inconvenient to wear. It's too hot and the tail keeps tripping her up or getting caught in the door, and Fonda handles this physical comedy just so well.
Please advise present situation.
You wouldn't understand.
And there's a lot of daft moments like this because you can't have a sex comedy without comedy. And yes, the reason I do feel a little bit guilty liking this film is because when you think of everything that Jane Fonda stands for, it's not the most feminist, shall we say. I love that Barbarella is the protagonist. I love that she's a 5-star double-rated astronavigatrix who's been entrusted by the president of Earth with this life-altering task that could affect the fate of humanity, but the character doesn't actually get to do all that much because she's kind of just there to look good and bang a bunch of people. That being said, Jane Fonda is obviously an incredible actress and a very funny woman.
She's a treasure.
And she makes the character so charming because she plays her with this innocence that makes all of the one-liners land really nicely.
But I haven't skied in ages.
There's also a particularly comical scene where Barbarella meets Dildano.
Come again?
The leader of the underground resistance in the city of Sogo, who agrees to help her on her mission. I mean, just look at his outfit, for God's sake. I feel like there are so many gags in this scene that it verges on Mel Brooks territory.
Are you typical of Earth women?
I'm about average.
Maybe that's giving it too much credit, but it really is joke after joke.
Our rendezvous point will be at 1600 hours. And our password will be Clanfire Puthkin with Golgeric Quindrobel Leclandithilio Go Go Go.
You mean the secret Clanfire Pugundik Golgeric Windrochel Leclandithilio Go Go Go?
Exactly.
One of the most prominent jokes being that Dildano wants to have sex with Barbarella the Earth way, which we've not yet seen, but know that it involves taking a pill and putting hands together until full rapport is achieved. When we see it in execution, really quite amusing. Mainly because it's so unsexy, but also because his hair goes absolutely crazy and then stays that way for ages afterwards.
Would you lend your equipment to our cause?
Oh, no, I couldn't do that. Not until I've accomplished my own mission.
Another character highlight for me is Pygar, the blind angel that lives in a giant nest. Now, the main reason I like him is because he's played by John Philip Law. And I like John Philip Law because he's in an awesome spaghetti western, Death Rides a Horse. If you haven't seen it, it's a revenge movie directed by Luciano Vincenzoni. The soundtrack is by Ennio Morricone, and it also stars the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Lee Van Cleef. And if you like Kill Bill, but you haven't seen Death Rides a Horse, then you should probably check it out, because a lot of inspiration came from there. And while we're at it, David Hemmings, who plays Dildano, is in Deep Red, which is another great film by an Italian director, Dario Argento, whose movies have been a huge influence on the horror genre. But we're not here to talk about good films, so let's get back to Pygar. I don't know if John Philip Law is doing a great job in this role or a terrible job in this role, because the character is so vague and emotionless.
I've regained the will to fly.
But he's kind of adorable, so it doesn't really matter. Plus the scene where him and Barbarella are flying through the sky fending off enemy ships is just cracking stuff. The soundtrack by the Bob Crew Generation Orchestra is outrageously 60s. Because that's what this film is. Like I said about Logan's Run encapsulating the 70s idea of what the future might be like, this film screams 60s because it's campy and sex mad.
Yeah, baby, yeah!
So just like Logan's Run, there's a lot of unnecessary nakedness, but unlike Logan's Run, where the men appear to have all of the sexual power, I do appreciate that in the city of Sogo, we get to see some women smoking the essence of man, and that the leader of the city, the Great Tyrant, is a woman, and she plays by her own rules.
Hello, pretty.
She's flirting with Barbarella, she's flirting with Pygar, she's just out here living her best life. And I appreciate that for her. Plus, Anita Pallenberg wears some outfits that would put Jenny Agutter to shame. I mean, what even is this?
It's my hot body, I'll do what I want.
And that's what's so funny about this film, is that it presents such abstract and cartoonish ideas of what's erotic, that it goes so far in one direction, it flips back on itself and becomes completely daft. But in a very self-aware way, I think. Like the famous scene where Duran Duran uses the excessive machine, which is basically a weapon that he plays like an organ that's supposed to make Barbarella orgasm until she dies, but she's just so dang sexual that she breaks the damn thing.
You've burnt out the excessive machine! You've blown all its fuses!
My goodness.
It's just so dumb. And a tad excessive. But I love that that's someone's idea, that that's where the future could take us. That and bird tubes and invisible keys to psychedelic dream chambers. I do really hope, though, that I can get a spaceship like Barbarella's in the future, because it's got fluffy walls and artwork on display, and Alfie, the intelligent computer that speaks in a posh English accent and sings to her.
Acceleration, look thin line, Barbarella, rise and shine.
It's ludicrous, but I want it all. And I enjoy this film because everything is ridiculous and nothing is taken seriously. It's a cartoon where none of the danger actually seems all that threatening. The world's about to end, but there's still time to change your outfit or bang yourself an angel. And unlike Logan's Run, where the doom vibes are high and the odds seem stacked against him, you can kind of watch Barbarella and feel safe that everything's going to be just fine. She'll work something out, even if it doesn't make any goddamn sense.
Where are we? In the Maximus and alive. I can see that, but why? It seems the Maximus has created this bubble to protect itself from your innocence. That's nice.
But let's not forget, playful and funny, yes, Barbarella does contain some creepy shit. The most memorable for me being when she crash lands on the first planet and gets abducted by these twins on a stingray sled that take her to an abandoned ship where a bunch of kids in wigs that look like charity shop Sue tie her up and set a horde of killer dolls onto her. And these dolls are terrifying. Truly terrifying. Like, they might haunt your dreams, and I'm sorry in advance for that. I also don't appreciate the labyrinth of rejects on the outskirts of the city of Sogo, where, like, people are turning into trees and walls and the environment, just because, I don't know, it's just creepy. Kind of like something out of the Mighty Boosh.
You are what you eat. And I am freaking cheese.
And yes, the special effects of this movie leave very little to be desired, and no, it's not the most moralistic tale. The only thing that Barbarella learns on her journey is that a little bit of physical contact goes a long way. But if I wanted quality and substance, I would have put on Mamma Mia too. Just saying. And that's all I'm gonna say about either film. There's a lot more to them, and maybe you already know that. Maybe you're about to find that out, or maybe you just need to take a cold shower. I don't know. But please be sure to join me next time when we talk about something else. And by we, I of course mean me, because you won't get a word in edgewise. But until then...
Love.
Love. Love. Oh, crap. I gotta run. Thank you for your time.